The house on T90 Drive in Kitsap County, Washington, wasn't merely burning. It was being systematically destroyed. On a bitterly cold night in January 2017, flames rose high into the sky, illuminating the surrounding woods like a twisted beacon. This was no ordinary house fire caused by faulty wiring or an unattended stove. Inside that roaring inferno, something far more sinister had already occurred. Before the fire even began, 3 members of a close-knit family had been executed. Their lives stolen in the quiet dark, their bodies left behind as if they meant nothing. Just moments before the fire was reported, a chilling 911 call broke through the stillness of the night. It was a young boy's voice, terrified, broken, gasping between sobs. "My whole family, they shot me too. Just come now." Then there was nothing. Silence. 2 days later, nearly 30 miles away in a remote forest of Mason County, another body would be discovered. It was the father. His remains charred, his body abandoned inside a burned-out pickup truck. He had been shot, then set ablaze, as though he were a discarded piece of evidence rather than a human being. This was not a burglary gone wrong. This was not a heated domestic dispute spiraling out of control. This was something colder, more deliberate. A systematic eradication of an entire family. An execution designed to send a message only a select few would understand. A community that had once felt safe, secure in the belief that such violence only happened somewhere else, was about to wake up to a horrifying new reality. And no one, not friends, not neighbors, not even close family, could begin to explain why. Timeline of discovery. It had begun like any other quiet Friday evening. Crystal Kuryaga, 37, was hosting a small get-together at her family home. Friends and neighbors gathered in the living room. Music played softly in the background, and the smell of homemade food drifted through the rooms. It was the kind of ordinary, comforting scene that could have belonged to any small American town. Johnny Kuryaga, 43, was there as well, a man known to many in the community as a hard-working entrepreneur and devoted husband. But at some point during the evening, Johnny received a phone call. Those nearby would later remember the sudden shift in his demeanor, the urgency that overtook his voice. He told everyone he needed to step out briefly. He'd be right back. He came back, but he didn't come inside. Instead, Johnny went straight into the garage. One of the guests reported hearing multiple male voices coming from that direction soon after. The tones were tense, angry, and unrecognizable. Then everything fell eerily silent. Inside the house, 16-year-old Hunter Shop was desperately trying to process what was happening. Bleeding, terrified, and alone, he managed to grab a phone and call 911. His voice, choked with pain and fear, barely made it through to the operator. "My whole family. They shot me too. Just come now." Moments later, gunshots rang out in the background of that call. And then, the line went dead. When emergency responders finally arrived, they were met with a nightmare. The house was already engulfed in flames, smoke billowing into the winter sky. Fire crews worked frantically to control the blaze, but inside they would uncover a scene so brutal that even seasoned investigators were shaken. Crystal, Hunter, and 16-year-old Jonathan Higgins, Crystal's stepson, had all been shot at close range, execution style. Their bodies lay near or on the beds, as if they had been positioned deliberately. And the final blow came 2 days later. Deep in the woods of Mason County, searchers found Johnny Kuryaga's body inside his truck, burned and riddled with bullet holes. His life ended miles from the warmth of his home, discarded in a lonely patch of forest. This was not a crime of passion. It wasn't random violence. It was methodical, surgical, and absolutely devastating. The victims and their life. To everyone who knew them, the Kuryaga family embodied the image of the modern American dream. They were the type of family you saw at high school football games, volunteering at community events, or waving at neighbors from the front yard on sunny afternoons. Johnny Kuryaga was well known in the local business community as the co-owner of Juanito's Taco Shop, a popular local spot beloved for its friendly service and authentic food. To many, he was a dedicated father and husband, a man who had worked hard to build something lasting for his family. Crystal ran Cale's Java Hut, a small but thriving coffee stand that had become a local fixture. Regulars didn't just stop for a caffeine fix. They came to see Crystal's smile, to chat about their day, to feel like they belonged. She had a warmth that made strangers feel like old friends, a generosity that left an imprint on everyone she met. Their two teenage boys, Hunter and Jonathan, were known for filling the house with an infectious energy that spilled out into the neighborhood. Laughter, playful arguments, the sounds of video games echoing late into the night. It was a house alive with the chaos and comfort of family life. Hunter, a creative and bright 16-year-old, was always up for a joke or a new adventure. Jonathan, the same age, had a quieter side, but shared a deep bond with his stepbrother. They weren't just forced together by marriage. They had truly become brothers, building a friendship that transcended blood. But behind that joyful surface, there was a world no one else could see. A world that would only come to light after tragedy struck. Because no one expected that the same house that had echoed with teenage jokes and late-night pizza would one day be reduced to smoldering ashes. Its warmth snuffed out in a single night of violence. No one imagined that the family who seemed so solid, so good, so impossibly normal, would become the center of a horror story so dark that even seasoned detectives would struggle to comprehend it. Crime scene breakdown. When first responders stepped into the Kuryaga house, they weren't just walking into a fire scene. They were stepping into a carefully orchestrated nightmare. Every detail, every scorch mark, told a story more chilling than any single bullet could. The fire wasn't chaotic or random. It was meticulously planned. Investigators quickly realized there had been two separate ignition points, one on each end of the house. Each was carefully doused with accelerant and set ablaze only after the victims had been executed. The flames spread rapidly, consuming walls, furniture, family photos. But they didn't consume everything. Before lighting the fire, large rocks had been thrown through the home's windows, not as an afterthought, but deliberately, to introduce more oxygen, ensuring that the flames would devour the structure faster and hotter. Whoever set that fire didn't just want to hide evidence. They wanted to send a message. They wanted obliteration. Inside, the victims lay exactly where they had fallen. Crystal was found near her bed, shot execution style. Hunter, the brave teen who managed to make that haunting 911 call, was found nearby, his life stolen before help could arrive. Jonathan was also shot, left close by as though someone wanted them grouped together even in death. There were no defensive wounds, no overturned furniture, no signs of a struggle. They never had a chance. While investigators combed through the remains, they stumbled upon an unexpected clue, a fireproof strongbox hidden in the master bedroom. Inside was $57,000 in cash, perfectly intact. Not a dollar was missing. The drawers throughout the house hadn't been rifled through. Jewelry sat undisturbed, electronics untouched. This was never about money. The fact that such a large amount of cash was left behind turned the investigation on its head. It wasn't a burglary gone wrong. It wasn't a spontaneous act of rage. This was premeditated. Someone came here to kill, not to steal, not to threaten, to eliminate. And then, miles away, the final grim puzzle piece. Johnny Kuryaga's burned-out truck, deep in the forest of Mason County. Inside, his body lay charred and riddled with bullets. He had been taken away, killed separately, and then set on fire. The symbolism couldn't be ignored. Removing him from his family home, isolating him in the woods, suggested a personal vendetta. Perhaps a ritual of finality, cutting him off not only from his family, but from everything he'd built. By the time investigators left that forest, it was clear this was an execution, carried out with military precision, leaving no room for survivors or misunderstandings. suspicion, and lies. As detectives unraveled the Kuryaga family's seemingly idyllic life, they stumbled into a labyrinth of secrets that would change everything they thought they knew. Johnny Kuryaga wasn't just the friendly taco shop owner waving at neighbors and flipping tortillas. Behind the smiles and small-town charm, he was living a dangerous double life. According to law enforcement, Johnny had been moving large quantities of cocaine up from California into Washington state, distributing kilos every few months. And his clients weren't just casual users, they included serious, dangerous players. Among those clients were members of the Bandidos Motorcycle Club, a notorious outlaw group with a history steeped in violence, drug trafficking, and intimidation. The kind of group that doesn't forgive easily, the kind of group that considers loyalty more sacred than family ties. One name in particular stood out: Robert "Bobby" Watson. As vice president of the Bandidos Bellingham chapter, Bobby didn't just buy drugs, he enforced silence. He commanded fear. Johnny and Bobby's partnership started out lucrative, but something changed. Tensions rose. A friend of Johnny's, who had initially helped distribute the drugs, backed out. This left Johnny and Bobby in direct communication, and soon, that relationship began to sour. Witnesses described a trip to California where Johnny and Bobby had a fierce argument. They said Bobby followed Johnny for miles, shadowing him like a predator in the dark. The rumor was that Johnny had accused Bobby of skimming money or mishandling shipments. In the world of outlaw bikers, even a whisper of betrayal is enough to sign your death warrant, and the death warrants of those you love. Then came another shocking twist. Danny J. Kelly Jr. Danny wasn't just a Bandidos associate. He was once Johnny's closest friend, his best man at his wedding, a man Johnny trusted with his life. But at some point, that bond shattered. Johnny reportedly accused Danny of stealing from him, and the falling out was deep and vicious. Johnny Watson, Bobby's younger brother, also entered the picture. Unlike his brother, Johnny Watson had no official criminal record, no club patches. But he had blood loyalty, and sometimes that's more dangerous than any formal initiation. Investigators soon realized these three men, Bobby Watson, Danny Kelly, and Johnny Watson, matched the voices heard in the garage that fatal night. The argument, the final confrontations, the gunshots that silenced Hunter's desperate plea for help. The trio didn't just kill Johnny, they came to erase his entire bloodline, to send a message. Betrayal is paid, for not only in your own blood, but in the blood of those who share your name, your home, your heart. The deeper investigators dug, the more they understood that this wasn't merely about money or drugs. This was about power, vengeance, and twisted loyalty taken to its deadliest extreme. The turning point. For years after the massacre, the case teetered between heartbreak and frustration. Evidence existed, but it wasn't enough to lock anyone away. Leads would flare up, then fizzle out, leaving investigators staring at burned walls and broken families. Grief became a heavy, constant fog hanging over the community. But the task force refused to give up. Through tireless work, tracking phone records, analyzing vehicle movements, flipping reluctant witnesses, they pieced together the final story. And as the puzzle took shape, the outlines of the three perpetrators solidified beyond doubt. In 2024, 7 years after the flames devoured the Kuryaga home, arrests were finally made. Bobby Watson, Danny J. Kelly Jr., Johnny Watson. Each charged with multiple counts: first-degree murder, arson, burglary, and a litany of related crimes. All three pleaded not guilty. In court, they wore the same cold, vacant expressions that had once haunted the garage that night. They offered no remorse, no explanations, just blank defiance. But a jury, after hearing the mountain of evidence, wasn't swayed. On April 2024, they were found guilty on more than 30 combined charges. and on May 7, 2024, they received their sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was filled with raw grief and trembling rage. Friends and relatives carried photos of Crystal, Hunter, Jonathan, smiling faces frozen in better days. Hunter's mother stood in front of the killers, placed her son's urn on the table beside his photo, and addressed the men directly. Her voice shook, but her words sliced through the silence like a blade. You can feel the evil just by being in the same room as them. 8 family members spoke that day. They didn't just mourn. They demanded justice, and they got it. But justice, as they quickly realized, is not the same as healing. The pain didn't stop at the courtroom doors. In 2018, only a year after the murders, another young family member, Joseph Kuryaga, died in a tragic car accident. It felt to the family as though the curse of that night kept echoing, claiming pieces of them one by one. For the Kuryagas, this wasn't just the loss of a home. It was the erasure of a legacy, the destruction of laughter-filled halls and shared dreams. A message burned into the community's memory, that under even the most perfect facades, darkness can thrive in silence, waiting for the right moment to erupt. Psychology and motive. When the dust finally settled and the courtroom lights dimmed, one question continued to haunt everyone. Why? Why not just kill Johnny, the man allegedly at the center of the betrayal? Why target Crystal, Hunter, and Jonathan, people who posed no threat, who knew nothing of the underground deals or biker codes? To understand this horror, we have to step inside a world that thrives on power, fear, and loyalty above all else. A world where a handshake can be a death sentence, and where family ties mean nothing compared to club loyalty. The Bandidos Motorcycle Club is more than just a biker gang. It operates like a shadow government. Rules, hierarchies, initiations, and above all, a demand for absolute allegiance. Loyalty isn't simply a virtue. It's an unbreakable law, enforced through violence and intimidation. If you betray that law, you don't just lose your life. You lose everything that connects you to the world. Johnny Kuryaga, by many accounts, had dared to cross an invisible line. Whether it was money mishandled, shipments questioned, or personal insults traded, something inside that circle broke. And in that universe, when respect is compromised, revenge doesn't come as a bullet in the dark. It comes as an erasure, a total, humiliating, unforgettable destruction. But the psychological twist didn't stop there. Danny Kelly Jr. wasn't just another enforcer. He was Johnny's friend. More than that, he was his best man at his wedding. The man who had stood beside him in one of the most important moments of his life. For years, that detail puzzled investigators and psychologists alike. How does a best friend transform into a cold-blooded killer? What poison festers deep enough to make you turn on someone you once considered family? The answers point to a toxic cocktail of betrayal, resentment, and survival instinct. In the outlaw biker world, even an accusation of theft or betrayal can mark you for death. Perhaps Danny saw the writing on the wall. Maybe he believed that aligning with Bobby Watson offered him protection, or at least survival. But survival came at a cost, and that cost was Johnny's entire family. Bobby Watson, meanwhile, wasn't just enforcing rules. He was making an example out of Johnny. A public execution, played out in private, but designed to ripple through the underground world like a shockwave. This was a warning. Cross us, and we won't just take your life. We will desecrate everything you love. And then there was Johnny Watson, Bobby's younger brother. Less is known about his personal motives, but in biker culture, blood loyalty can outweigh any personal moral code. If your brother demands vengeance, you deliver it, even if it means fire, bullets, and the cries of innocent teenagers. This crime wasn't about drugs alone. It wasn't about a failed business deal or unpaid debts. It was about power, about showing that no sanctuary exists for traitors, not even inside your own home, beside your children, beneath the roof where you tuck them in at night. And that, perhaps, is the most chilling part. It wasn't an act of rage. It was an act of cold, strategic dominance, a psychological chess move that turned an entire family into a message carved in blood and ash. Aftermath and emotional echo. After the convictions in 2024, the Kuryaga family and the community of Kitsap County were left to pick up pieces that could never fully fit back together. Courtroom justice, though necessary, could not fill the empty chairs at dinner tables or silence the echo of lost laughter in the halls. In the days following the sentencing, news outlets replayed images of Crystal smiling behind the counter at Kale's Java Hut, Johnny waving to customers outside Juanito's taco shop, and Hunter and Jonathan horsing around in the yard, PlayStation controllers in hand. Each image felt like a shard of glass, bright but painful, cutting into the hearts of those left behind. Hunter's mother, who had to bury her teenage son long before any parent should, carried her son's ashes into court and placed them on a table, a quiet act of defiance and grief. Her words that day, "You can feel the evil just by being in the same room as them," became a rallying cry for a community trying to make sense of the unimaginable. 8 family members rose to speak that day. Each testimony trembled with loss, but also with a fierce need to reclaim the dignity that the killers had tried to obliterate. They didn't just speak of the murders, they spoke of birthdays missed, graduations that would never happen, and quiet moments that now echoed like a hollow wind through empty rooms. And yet, even as the community tried to heal, tragedy continued its cruel march. In 2018, just a year after the massacre, another young member of the Kuryaga family, Joseph, died in a car crash. For the family, it felt as if the darkness from that night in January had grown tendrils, pulling at their lives long after the smoke had cleared. What was left behind was more than charred remains or courtroom verdicts. It was a generational wound, a stain on a once perfect picture of American family life, small businesses, community events, teenage dreams, all reduced to ash and shadows. The murders forced an entire town to confront an uncomfortable truth, that beneath the surface of any neighborhood, no matter how idyllic it seems, there may lie secrets capable of swallowing everything whole. Johnny's double life, Crystal's trusting heart, the boy's innocence, all collided with a world ruled by violence and fear, a world that most people pretend doesn't exist. The biker's final message was clear. No one is untouchable, and no fortress, not even the warmth of your own family, can protect you from betrayal's final cost. In the end, this wasn't just a story of murder. It was a story of power, identity, and the fragile lines we draw between love and loyalty, family and survival. It was a story that asked a terrifying question. How well do we ever truly know the people closest to us? For the Kuryagas, the question is no longer hypothetical. It's carved into gravestones, whispered in late-night nightmares, and scorched into the land where their home once stood. And for the rest of us, it serves as a chilling reminder that the most monstrous acts often hide behind the most ordinary smiles, and that sometimes the biggest fires start long before the first match is ever struck.